Okay, because it says you're in a practice session and I didn't know. Okay, because it says you're in a practice session and I didn't know.
Thank you. I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order, March 24th at 6:02 p.m. I'm going to take a roll call. Alan?
Here.
Here. Pat?
Here.
Mike? Mike?
Mike's muted.
Oh, okay. Ed?
I'm here.
Yep, and Sheila's here. Good evening. This is a virtual Board of Selectmen meeting. If you wish to make a public comment and speak on an agenda item, please use the raise your hand feature on your device. The moderator will be notified and will unmute you. Please identify yourself before making comment. And Dave, how many participants do we have tonight? $11 attendees. Thank you. Item 2, approve. Now, I looked at these and the 5 of us were at all of these meetings. So I think we'll take them as a package.
Yeah.
Okay, so approve the March 3rd, 8th, 10th, and 17th Selectmen meeting minutes.
So move.
Second.
Second, okay.
Taking a roll, Pat,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and Sheila says aye. Number 3, public forum. This is an opportunity for anyone who wants to address the Board of Selectmen with any issue that is not on the agenda.
I don't see any hands.
Okay. We'll go on to item 4. Consider a renewal special amusement application submitted by the Ramp Grill LLC, DBA Pier 77 Restaurant located at 77 Pier Road. Staff recommend approval of this license. And I also asked the question whether, because usually they have their liquor license and special amusement together. They sent in their liquor license earlier and we approved it. So this is just the amusement application.
So moved.
Second.
In a second. All right, taking a roll call. Pat,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and Sheila says aye. Motion passes. Review final fiscal year 2023 budget and make recommendations. And Lori, want to speak on this at all?
Sure. So in your packet, Denise prepared a spreadsheet with the proposed budget. So you
Yeah.
can see that it's in categories, general government, public safety, health and welfare, public works, recreation, culture contingency, and capital and reserve and debt service. And so these will be how they are aligned for warrant articles as well. So the board should know that these numbers represent the proposed budget with a couple of changes. Those are noted on the second page of your spreadsheet. There was a reduction in the solid waste monitoring of 55,000. And that was, as we stated, because the water well testing required by DEP is going to be covered by DEP in the future. We also increased the fuel contingency account by 35,000 due to the increased cost of fuel we have seen as of late. And so that leaves a net change of a reduction of 20,000 to the proposed numbers. I don't know if the board has any comments or questions for Denise or I.
No questions, it looks like. Okay, and we're going to take these in sections.
That's what staff is recommending.
Okay, so the first one would be general government program expenses, and this includes administration, zoning board of appeals, conservation commission, growth planning committee, legal fees, insurance, community development, planning and development. Total general government program expenses
Make a motion.
amounting to $2 million.
You want me to make a motion?
2,192,643.
would you like me to make a motion?
Yeah,
I'll make a motion
Well,
to, go ahead.
I wanted to read the number.
Oh, did you? I'm
I
breaking.
did. I did.
Okay. So you were breaking up. I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry for interrupting you, Madam Chair. I'd make a motion to recommend $2,192,643 for the general government program.
Second.
And Pat,
aye,
Mike Weston,
Aye.
Alan Daggett,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and Sheila says aye. That's for that part. Next is public safety program expenses. This includes police department, communications, fire department, chems, emergency management, animal control officer, and harbor master. Total public safety program expenses, $3,211,343.
Alan.
I'll make a
Second.
motion to recommend $3,211,343 for the public safety program.
second,
All right, taking a roll. Pat,
aye,
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Sheila says aye. The next is health and welfare program expenses. Solid waste, and that's the one that came down by 578,436. Public health, welfare, social services, shellfish conservation, public restrooms. Total health and welfare program expenses, $821,509.
So moved.
Second.
And taking the roll, Pat,
aye,
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and Sheila says aye. Next is public works program expenses, highway department, hydrants, shade tree, street lights, and cemetery. Total public works program expenses, $1,426,660.
so
Motion
moved,
to. Second.
And I will take the roll. Pat,
aye,
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Sheila says aye. Recreation, culture, contingency, and miscellaneous program expenses. Recreation, Graves Library, Cape Porpoise Library, Parsons Way, Goose Rocks Beach Advisory Reserve, contingency, and miscellaneous agencies for a total of $677,408.
Make a motion to recommend $677,408 for the recreation, culture, and contingency and miscellaneous program expenses.
oh, second,
Sec-
Okay, taking the vote, Pat,
aye,
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and Sheila says aye. And the last but not least, capital expenses and reserve account and debt service payments. Capital administration, capital police, communications, fire, highway, road improvement, sidewalk, recreation, special projects, piers, and debt service for a total of $3,427,231.
So moved.
Second.
And Pat,
aye,
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and Sheila says aye. The total for the municipal expenditures was $11,756,794. So the Board of Selectmen passes the budget.
Can I make one comment though, for the public, the people who are tuned in? Just to let the public know that we have spent a number of meetings discussing the budget along with the budget committee. And this is the final recommendation that we have had between the selectmen, the town manager, and the budget committee.
Thank you. Are there any hands up, Dave, or is there any question? All right, if none, then no hands. Item 5, review final fiscal year 2023 budgets. Oh, excuse me. That's what we just did, right?
Right.
Yeah,
So
we're on 6.
I was using the last rundown of the voting. So item 6, presentation by Kevin Roche of Save Our Shores, Saco Bay regarding the county purchase of dredging equipment.
So in the audience, we have Kevin Roche, and can you promote him as a panelist, Dave?
Hello, everyone.
Evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you to Lori to setting this all up for us. I'll keep it brief and I'll leave it for questions, depending upon the material that you have and you want to, but I'll give you a recap of where we're at. We're Save Our Shore Saco Bay. I've been leading the group for a couple of years now. On mainly issues around our shoreline, but we address everything Saco Bay, including the Army Corps, living shorelines type resolutions to erosion, using the energy of the waves, dune planning, and also pursuit of dredge. And York County came up with funds for the county, 41 million on a $25 million budget. And we, went in front of the county over the summer, with a chance to get it purchased, get a big cost out of the way for communities. And the county did table the vote. They seemed pretty positive. They just wanted us to spread the word, get other communities interested, letters of interest, letters of support, letters of, we want to work with you. Depending upon the county buying this dredge, and that vote is coming up in April. And we've had great conversations up and down the coastline here. We have Wells on board. We have Scarborough outside the county. We have Old Orchard, Saco, Biddeford. We got Kennebunk on Tuesday night to have the town manager continue to investigate and work with us. And then we're here in front of you. We do understand that, buying the dredge is the first part of the process, but it's the key part because, other government entities, including, Saco, to possibly, set up the hosting of the dredge to start, and also get a regional shoreline commission together to not only schedule dredge jobs, but also to address everything that could be affecting our coastline as well. So, but the first step is for the county to approve the purchase of this dredge. With that, I'm here to answer any questions. And also, I believe our mayor of Saco is also here to answer questions for anything that might be moving ahead with Saco.
Kevin, I read your specs for your dredge, and it says it's a suction dredge. I don't know if you're aware, but we have 2 harbors here in Kennebunkport, one in the Kennebunk River, and the other predominant harbor is Cape Porpoise, which was underwent an Army Corps dredge 2 years ago. Yep. Now, I'm not a dredge expert, but as a commercial fisherman, I know quite a bit about the bottom of the ocean. And I don't believe that dredge is gonna work in Cape Porpoise. It's all mud. They had to bucket it out.
It's a hydraulic dredge, no question, and it's a pump. You know, it can go up to 2 miles. I did go over the specs with Chris Mayo, the harbor master, and other harbor masters up and down. And I'm not saying it's first off, we're not here to replace any Army Corps responsibility. One, and we're not attesting it can do everything, but the cutters and the 14-inch size pump size hose they're talking about can do more than other suction dredges. So so there was some optimism and encouragement to go after this dredge for as many of the communities that we can use it for.
Well, speaking, you're speaking here to us tonight. Where would you put the dredge spoils if you were to dredge it? You can't just pump them out onto the shoreline like they did in the 1950s. You'd need a barge to haul them away.
So all that stuff still has to be permitted. You still have to the local community would still have to pay for their own permitting to what they could use the dredge for.
That's not my question. My question is, once you've sucked it off the bottom of the harbor, where are you going to put it?
But that has to be pre-approved, though. You can't just go to a dredge and then have nowhere to go with it. You would have to get that approved.
I don't think you understand the question. Let's just say you have a permit. The only approved dredge site around here is the Cape Arundel dredge site, which is about 2.5 miles from Cape Porpoise. You would need to have a barge and a very large tugboat to take it out there. Nothing in your proposal says that. And
I'm not attesting that it could do every dredge. All I could say is that we've talked to different harbor masters of the different towns, including Chris, and there seemed to be very much exciting about that there could be use for this dredge. But that said, it does have to be permitted, and it does come with a support boat, not a barge, not to actually bring material out somewhere. But it can do up to a 2-mile pump out.
So I have another question. Getting this barge is the beginning of the whole scenario. You have you have breakdowns, you have expenses that way. You also have expenses for the crew. There's a lot of expense there, and I don't think Cape Porpoise, like Ed just said, would be able to use that barge in there, not barge, but the dredge in there to go ahead and clean it out. So I'm not really in favor on signing on to this and paying for something that we probably can't use.
Yeah, let me make sure we're clear. This is not to ask Kennebunkport or any community to pay for anything. That this is, if it becomes available, would later on, would you be interested in having this? And it's not just, this is, for many communities, some communities might not participate. It could include Kennebunkport. But what we're trying to get at is if it became available and if there was something to utilize, your neighboring community, Kennebunk or of course, Saco Bay would definitely use it. Would you want to be part of, a commission that tackles all sorts of shoreline issues, not just dredging scheduling, but I'm a former councilor myself in Saco. There is it's the town council that controls who's gonna contribute to what you're gonna pay for, what you want to contribute to it. And our anticipation is that it's paid for when you need it, and get you scheduled in. As long as you're permitted, then that's when you use it. So I can't say all 11 communities are going to use it every year. I don't think that would happen. But there is no cost asked from Kennebunkport at all.
Who pays for the ongoing costs of the crew? You got a one-time grant. How are you going to continue to pay for everybody?
Yeah, so the city of Saco is putting up to their budget to show the county that they are willing to host the dredge, at least to start, is that they would put actually municipal ARPA funds, get that approved to bring on personnel. Now, I don't know if you guys probably don't know, this is not my write-ups, but the city of Saco just made the part-time harbor master being paid like a couple $1,000s a year to a full-time position of, I think, 50K. So that is already one big commitment to basically help man the dredge and direct what would happen in the Saco River or off Saco. So that would be the start, and then the dredge is bought. Saco is committing to at least get the setup and hosting go, and then we will see where the state might come in. We're not anticipating the county will run it like Barnstable County does in Cape Cod, but they're the ones buying the dredge. They could certainly decide to participate, but once it's up and going, we believe that there'll be enough jobs that municipalities will pay to pay for that, to pay for the operation, pay for maintenance, of course.
So, but you still really haven't answered our question. Are you going to build Kennebunkport if we don't use dredge?
Nope. Again, we're the nonprofit advocacy group here that is proposing this and asked for that, but I know government will end up, setting up the commission, but it is absolutely not our proposal intention to make a county community pay for something that they're not using. That is not the situation.
Well, that's not the way it usually works.
No, it's not. It really isn't.
Not the way it usually works. It usually works that, when something like this gets set up, you've got crews, you've got annual expenses, you've got maintenance, you've got this, you got that, and somebody's got to pay for it. And it's not going to be one town. It's going to be a bunch of towns. And I'm with Alan and I'm with Ed. I don't think this is something that we need as a town.
Your operational costs are going to kill you. Keeping a 38-foot lobster boat going is not an inexpensive proposition. I can just imagine keeping this $1 million dredge operating every year, just the maintenance and costs alone. And you put in $3 a gallon for fuel. If you can find me $3 a gallon for fuel, sign me up.
Yeah, and there's no real financial model in here that says, what, it's 10 years, 20 years, what's going to be, how long is this thing? So, yeah, I would just say that for right now, we take a pass. That would be my recommendation.
Mine too, for right now. Yep.
Yeah. I just don't see this piece of equipment working for Kennebunkport. It absolutely will not dredge out Cape Porpoise. And I'm not an expert on what the bottom composition of the river is, but I believe there's quite a bit of mud on the edges over there as well. And Army Corps has been very good about taking care of the mouth of the river.
And did you say that Kennebunk has signed on to this?
They voted Tuesday night unanimously to have their town manager stay close to it, show interest in it as we move through the process.
They haven't signed up to it.
Well, we're not asking anyone to sign up to use the dredge. We're not asking that. We are asking that this is county funds available, and there are communities, the Saco Bay communities, wells are in a huge need of regular dredging. And so we would like to get everyone as much interested in it, but we're not asking for we don't even have that power. And yes, I definitely know how government works, and I know they could be inefficient and costs can rise and what have you, but a big cost gets relieved from the communities with the capital purchase. The hard work is ahead. The hard work is ahead in terms of forming the scheduling, the operations and everything, but a big cost is removed.
This money is designated specifically for this by the county and not for anything else? Not for anything else.
It qualifies. They agreed, the commissioners did agree that it qualified under infrastructure and lost tourism money for the COVID fund. So,
The county hasn't made a vote at this time.
no, they tabled their October vote, encouragement to say, go out there and talk to the other communities. There isn't a set amount, of course, the more the merrier. I used that phrase to Kennebunk the other night. But yeah, we've been tasked out there to see if we can get general interest up and down the coastline. And we did add, the other thing too, is that not only we added Scarborough, who's outside the county, but there's been private organizations and University of New England that have been interested that would possibly pay for it and use it as well. Not to mention maybe even further northern communities as well. We just saw, not to say this is realistic, but Bar Harbor was, I'm sorry, not Bar Harbor, Blue Hill was in the news yesterday saying that they really need a dredge, but because of the cost, the Army Corps wants to charge them $3.5–4 million that they're balking. So
The Army Corps doesn't charge communities. They came and dredged Cape Porpoise Harbor. It was
this
$3 million.
news, no, this news yesterday was too costly for them, for Blue Hill.
You saw that on the news, or you actually saw that in writing somewhere?
Saw it in the article yesterday. It's on the Bangor Daily News. So Blue Hill is balking at the $3.5 million cost.
Well, I guess we got a deal then, because they did us for free.
If they're responsible for the channel, yeah, they would.
They did.
Yeah, they did.
And also in Cape Porpoise, that last dredge was done in the 70s. Our dredge lasted 40 years. That's quite a return on investment.
Yeah.
I don't anticipate that Cape Porpoise will need to be dredged again in my lifetime.
Well, the Saco River got their dredge after 25 years, and it still needs a lot more dredging. So, we're not taking over for the Army Corps responsibility, but it needs a lot more dredging.
Yeah, well, it's a river and it's probably sandy bottom. I mean, it's different than what we have here in Cape Porpoise. So.
Yeah.
We're mainly all mud.
Yes,
I know.
Just walk through it.
Yeah, and it sounds like for Kennebunkport, it's not quite what we need. We're not sure that it would be helpful to us. We can probably sit back, see how you guys do, and if the day comes that we may need you, we'll call you. But at this point, it doesn't look like it's something that we would use as a town.
We've got a lot of other things that we need to be working on too, so.
And yeah, again, we're not here to ask for costs. We're not asked to work on anything. I think we're just kind of looking for, in the end, kind of, we hope you succeed. I think that's what we're looking for. And if you can be a part of it, then great. So
You're in our thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers, yeah.
I hope you succeed, but I don't think that we're at this point in time that we're able to help out.
Yeah.
Sheila, just so you know, John Dykstra has his hand up in the audience.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yep.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to echo Ed's concern that the mud on the bottom of Cape Porpoise is probably not suitable for a suction dredge. However, I would suggest that Goose Rocks Beach might very much be so. We have an issue of our dunes, and there are concerns about or needs to get permitting to be able to move sand from offshore, but to replenish those dunes, if we could possibly get the permission to take sand from farther out in the pan and move it up on the dune to build the dunes up, that this dredge would be an awesome capability to do something like that. So I'm in full agreement that Cape Porpoise Harbor is not a candidate, but the beach areas very well might be. And if there really is no financial commitment on the town's part, I would suggest that there really is maybe a possibility that we could use it. And we might want to at least say, well, gee, if there was something we could use, we would do it. And therefore, we kind of like the idea. So I would just offer that for consideration.
I have a question for you, John. How would you get the dredge up on the beach?
Well, I wouldn't think the
Take the
dredge
sand
would
off
be
the
the
dredge
beach.
onto the beach.
I think the dredge would be sitting offshore. Of course, you know that ledge off East Fair Rocks comes out pretty quick, but you might be able to take some good amount off that sandbar as it's coming up towards timber. And then the dredge is in the water, obviously. It's sucking up that sand. And then there would be, I would think, a pipe that's coming up on the beach, and then it's being moved to dump that over the dune. Now, I may have that totally wrong, but if that could work, I think that'd be flippin' awesome as a way to get that dune built up to be able to provide a few more decades of protection for the beach. So I don't know. This is just off the cuff. But, you know, I think we need to look beyond just Cape Porpoise in terms of, which is important, but in terms of dredging, there may be potential in the sands of our beaches as well.
Yeah,
John,
what they
I
do
had-
with that, John, is they blast it out on the beach, and then they use a great big bulldozer and they push it up. That's how they reseed beaches. My concern with that would be you start dredging away that sand dune out there going towards Timber Island at the end of Little River. Something's going to fill that in, and it might be somebody's house.
Oh, well, obviously, this is for people far more brighter than me, and to be able to say what the implications might be. I just think we need to think beyond Cape Porpoise Harbor. That was my only thought, guys. So let me leave it there.
Thank you, John. Well, the board, how would you like to?
I'd like to just say we table this for now because, you know, John's got a point of view, which I don't disagree with, but I can tell you that I had experience with this down at Amelia Island when we were there and lived there or had a condo there, and that the beach eroded during a storm and they ended up pumping months and months pumping sand out just offshore and came in and built it up, and it's eroded again. I don't know how much it's eroded now, but it was completely eroded before. So I think it's an ongoing battle, but I don't see that. I look at Goose Rocks Beach there quite a bit, and you see, hey, it goes out one year and comes back the next year. Or it moves down to the other side and then it comes back on the other side. But I mean, I've lived here for 20 years. John's lived here a lot longer than me. I've been involved. You guys have been involved a lot longer than me. But I don't see overall erosion of Goose Rocks Beach. Some years it gets sculpted out one end and then the other end fills back in and et cetera. So I don't see the need for that. So I don't know, but John's you know, a geologist, so he knows this stuff better than I do. But I just think that I haven't seen the erosion there that would require some kind of dredging and replenishment. That's my.
It would be a better project for the folks on the other side of the river in Kennebunk Beach, because they suffer from the same issues as Saco or, you know, Old Orchard Beach and Camp Ellis and places like that, because the jetty has removed all their sand.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I think we just.
I'm with
table
Mike.
it.
I just don't see that we need to take any action on this evening.
And there's no need.
No need to take action?
No.
Okay, that seems to be the consensus. You know, I think, like Mike said, we sort of bide our time or wait to see. If in fact, like John said, there's any use, then we may come back. But at this point, Kennebunkport really, it doesn't sound like there's a need. But we thank you for your presentation, Kevin, and, maybe you'll be back to us again at another time.
Oh, and I thank you for the time. And, in the end, we just, we just don't want, I guess, a vote of no, I guess. So thank you for at least, waiting it out and just follow the process. And
Yeah.
we'll hopefully have a dredge that everyone could possibly use in the future. So
Thank
thanks.
you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Take care.
All right. Item 7, authorize ordinance amendments to be placed on the warrant for Junetown meeting. So Werner,
Werner is here, and I'll let him talk about the sign language.
Sure. So at our last meeting where we spoke about this, so what you have in front of you are proposed ordinance amendments regarding signage. As we have talked about, that there's a need to amend the ordinance language so that it, is not content specific. This is subject to a number of, Supreme Court cases that have dealt with this issue. Since the last version that you saw, we spent a little bit more time with town council and made a couple of different amendments to the language that you had beforehand, and most of it is just in performance standards and different practices. For example, we wanted it to be made clear that temporary signage was not something subject to needing to get a permit for that. Also, permanent signage, that it was subject to getting a permit through the code office. We also set a time limit we're able to set a time limit for temporary signage on property, and also created some performance standards for that signage that could appear permanently on private property, and we set some time limits and sizes around that. We also made sure that we had things like property postings, signage. So if you post your property for no trespassing, things of that nature, that was identified and listed in the exempt category. So those were I would say those are the major changes that council and myself and Andrew Welch worked on. And so we're feeling pretty comfortable with what's presented before you. We also identified a potential conflict in another section of ordinance, and that's in the second document. And that just was to clarify that objects in temporary signage in the right of way, that's consistent with the state law that governs election signage, was permissible. So those are the big changes since the last time.
Yep.
As I said, we're feeling pretty comfortable with the amendments that have been put here in front of you.
I make a motion that we approve the adding to the town vote in
the warrant, yeah.
town warrant in June for changing these ordinances as submitted.
Second.
Lori, did you have something to say?
I would just say, besides the sign language, I don't know if Mike's motion also included the harbor and
Harbor
waterfront
master, yes,
and the Kennebunk River and interlocal agreement language.
which was just the local agreement that we discussed at previous meeting. Yes,
Correct.
thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And
Yeah.
I will take the roll. Pat,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
I,
Ed,
Well, you know how much I like electronic signs, but I'll vote aye tonight.
okay. And I say aye. And the motion passes for the three amendments to the ordinance. All right,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Item 8, presentation of the Connector Transportation Program for seniors in Kennebunk, Arundel, and Kennebunkport.
Yes, so I'm gonna ask Dave to bring up Chris Osterreiter and Karen Witten from, promote them to panelists, and Werner and Allison to come forward as well. Just as a introduction, Karen Witten is the Deputy Director of Community Development, and Chris Osterreiter is the Director of Community Development in Kennebunk. And we were recently, Werner, Allison, and I were recently invited to a meeting with Arundel and Kennebunk representatives to discuss this new connector project. And I will let Chris and Karen discuss it, but from a staff level, we thought that there is a need in our community, and it made sense to be a part of this service going forward. So I will turn it over to Karen and Chris.
Great. Well, good evening, and thank you to the Kennebunkport Select Board for having us here tonight. And we did have the opportunity to meet with town staff several weeks ago from both Arundel and Kennebunkport to introduce this program. The town received a grant from, actually it was funneled from the Federal Transit Authority through ITN America, which is an existing transportation program based on this model that they've created for rural and smaller communities called ITN Country. So the grant is a 2-year pilot program to create and explore what that would look like in a community like ours. And the model is that it depends upon these small communities to do what they do best, which is use their citizens for action to address needs in towns that can be difficult to support in other ways. So we're looking for volunteers, drivers to take residents of our towns, the places that they need to go, and specifically focus on those older adults and individuals with disabilities who may face transportation challenges already. We definitely know there's a need as people age to have that freedom and independence carry forward with them, and transportation can often be that barrier that limits that for them. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the program. I think a little bit of a tough act to follow with the dredging, but I want to be clear. We're not asking for anything tonight other than perhaps some support and participation from town staff, leaders, residents. We're really wanting to ask Kennebunkport if you'll come along for a ride with us, test this program out. The intent is not to be a burden on the municipalities financially, but to support this need in other ways. And we believe that our communities will agree and that they will support this program. So be happy to entertain any questions, explain more about the program if there's something specific, or hear from your staff as well.
First of all, I think it's a great idea. I do.
Me too.
We got so many elderly people, including myself, in this community that are going to be need this service. I do have a question for you. Is this a regularly scheduled, or is this an as need?
This is an as-need program. It is on demand. And what's fantastic about it is the model that we get to follow. ITN America has been doing this since 1995 in Portland, bigger city. They have different demographics and different things that they face, but what they've done is translated their model down to smaller communities, and the model is the same. There's a ride coordinator at the head of it all. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the senior centers transportation program. They call it FISH. It's very similar to that, however, their rides are specifically for medical purposes. These rides are for any purpose. You want to give that complete freedom and independence to those people who need these rides and not limit them. So how it works is you call the ride coordinator, you request a ride, you're matched with a driver. There's lots of program specifics about how this can actually work, but there's a nominal fee. There's usually a pickup fee and a per mile fee that is charged to the rider. And what they've found through their research is oftentimes older adults are not necessarily looking for charity or a favor. They want to pay for this, but things like Uber and Lyft, those can be a little bit out of their comfort zone, out of their price range for sure. At times with surge pricing, I hear, and things like that. So this is meant to be a little bit of an in-between type of service for that. So yeah, you call on demand, you're matched with the driver. That's why it's so important to recruit those drivers and have a really good bench of volunteers willing to support the rides that are needed.
What is the reason? What is the reason for 18 years and older? Because I can see abuse, I can see students wanting to ride somewhere and so forth. And if you've only got so many drivers and you've got some elderly folks who really need a ride and some other kids that maybe are some younger people that may or may not need a ride, but need a ride to go to school or something. How do you sort that out?
Yep, great question. And I think the reason that we stated 18 years or older for a couple of reasons. For example, I have a son who's on the autism spectrum and is really resisting getting his driver's license. So he'll be 18 soon, and we're looking to have him take some classes at a local community college. And having him get there without needing mom or dad to do it, if we can't, we're both working full time, is of the utmost importance. So we've talked about adults 18 or older. There are various times when those adults may need rides. It's really not intended to have a high school age student who's perfectly capable of transporting themselves just use it for that. There is a fee involved, so there's that buy-in that people are going to have to make that investment to pay for a ride. And what we keep hearing from the people who have done this for so long is a lot of our concerns about what if, there's abuse, there's taken advantage of, people want to go places that may be inappropriate for a volunteer to take them. It really just doesn't happen. The model is you call for a ride, you pay for it, you're making that investment. The goals are to serve those vulnerable populations for sure, but we didn't want to really restrict it while we're learning what the needs of our communities might be, because there could be that 18-year-old who may not identify as someone with a disability that is visible, but that still may need help with that transportation. So we didn't want to really cut someone off before we knew exactly what our community was going to need.
What would a ride to Sanford cost?
Great question. And part of the reason why we're here in front of you tonight is the major tenet of the grant is that the community shape the grant for their community. So setting prices is something that is within our purview to completely customize. And right now we've batted around several different ideas and wanted to make sure that the fees, first of all, I should say, volunteer drivers have the option of being reimbursed for occupied miles when they're transporting customers. So some of the fees go towards that reimbursement, some would go towards the ride. Because the program is still in a beta test, it's still being tested and developed, we're batting around some fees, and this is why we're coming to you now. I can tell you one thing we've talked about is $1 pickup fee and then 50 cents a mile. So what did we say, Chris, to Sanford was $19?
Yeah. So I'm going to jump in here for 1 second. I'll keep this very brief. Your questions are exactly why we would love your community to be involved, because what the program does, and Karen's saying all the wonderful things and leaving all the even better things out, each participant gets to kind of tailor the program to their community. So we were super concerned about that. We did all kinds of what would it be, and we started to get nervous because we don't know that until the people and the users tell us what they think that means. The volunteers can charge nothing. They can charge 25 cents. They can charge $1.50, and we participate nationwide with all these other groups going through it, and they have these different things and say, this is how we do it. If you were to charge the standard IRS rate to make their trip with the $1 pickup fee, it's like a $19 ride. We both said that, what the heck? This doesn't make sense. And I think what we need to do is understand with each community who brings forward their volunteer drivers, what they want to give back to their community, because it's not like it needs that to support itself. It's going to live on the backs of the volunteers. So mostly what the towns will do will provide that support administration, the thinking ahead. So the service area, I'm going to stop and say, Karen, I think they benefit by understanding how the community can work and how the program can expand and shrink. And because I'll talk all night and I love to, so I'm going to stop.
Okay, I got a question for you.
I have a question.
With the
Wait a minute.
machinery.
Pat's
Who
speaking.
provides the vehicle?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Who provides the vehicles? Who provides the insurance for the people that you pick up? The maintenance, and And who, sounds very much more like a taxi service.
Well, that's a great question. Part of the core of this program is engaging with the riders and providing a social support as well. So the riders don't sit in the back seat, they sit right up front. There's actually something called door-to-door service where the volunteer can get out, they can unload groceries, they can assist with a walker if there is one, help them get up the stairs if they need to. All of the volunteers go through a complete vetting background check through the town. They do provide their own vehicles. This is their volunteer, their service that they're offering, and they do have to have personal liability and damages insurance. So that will all be checked and vetted. That's why we offer the ability for there to be that reimbursement. We know it won't cover all of their costs, but that is also why we call it a volunteer service. There's an element here where people want to give back. And just from speaking with some of the potential volunteers already, none of these questions are barriers for them so far. We've reached out to a lot of our clergy community and talked to members of their congregation. We know that these people in small towns are already doing this for people. They're running errands for people. They're bringing them here and there, and they're not worried about those things. So we want to do our due diligence. We want to have protections in place. But yes, it's that offering. When you volunteer, you do different things. Either, you're packing food boxes with your hands and you're using yourself that way, or you're going to drive your car and you're going to give that commitment to the program.
If I could offer one thing, and I think this is fascinating. We sat through a training session the other morning, and what it does is it creates like a rider profile. So if there's a wheelchair accessible need, they have certain drivers who can match and meet that need. They talk about special services, special needs, all of those things that can match who a rider may be. And then they have drivers who actually align and say, we can do all this stuff. So you might get someone like myself who thinks they can carry in a load of firewood, and I don't know why I'd offer to do that, but they are accommodating to the needs of the people who are getting that service. And I think that's what's great about it, is what we're benefiting from is all that background work that's happened over the last 20 years, where there's a software platform and it's being managed that way. So it's like all of these things, it's like an online dating service, but for drivers. And what I mean by that is it's matching these profiles. So when that person comes and takes you somewhere, they recognize, oh, they're going to have all these needs and it's a useful experience. I think the background checks for the drivers, the feedback from that rider who has issues, knowing that there's somewhere to say, hey, what happened? That's what's happening on the backside, which is why we have the ride coordination, all those types of things. So what we know is internally in our community is part of Kennebunkport and Arundel with like COS and these other things. And the volunteer pool comes from all those places. It just makes sense for us to try to make sure everybody has that opportunity to participate. And I think that's what our hope is they say, wow, how can we be part of this? And we show them the way.
Alan, did you have a question? Alan?
No, Pat already asked the question and it was answered.
Okay.
Thank you. I didn't hear Pat speak, or else I would not have interrupted him.
I'm sure he's not helping.
Yeah, sorry, Sheila. Yeah, there's a little lag here tonight.
Yeah.
I would just like to say that I have a lot of experience with the fish program. My grandmother never drove, and I used to give her rides after my grandfather died. She lived another 20 years, and I couldn't always do it. And, the fish program was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Couldn't say enough good things about it. And it sounds like you're all that and then some. So you certainly have my support. Anything that I can do to help.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I think one of the things Karen and Chris had brought up when we met with them is that there's an opportunity too for family members, et cetera, to put credits on people's accounts. And so then they can have that funding available for rides in the future.
Yeah. Good
Excellent
idea.
point to bring up. There's lots of customization with this. They have personal transportation accounts as a rider. They fill out an application. So we have emergency contacts. We know medical conditions and medications they're taking that can easily be, they're privatized and kept locked down in the software, but they can be accessed if there's an emergency. So we're covering all those bases. And just really quickly to say, the senior center, we're huge fans of fish, and Allison and I have used it for years with our general assistance or social service clients that have needed transportation, and we're not looking necessarily to take that over. In fact, we've approached them to see how we could partner with them as well, which is why another reason why it makes sense. They're a partner of the 3 towns. Their membership is the 3 towns, and so we wouldn't want to have them join, into this effort and then restrict the other towns, and that wouldn't make a lot of sense. But they do have some challenges in that it's a staff of 2 over there, and the executive directorship is changing, and they're not quite ready to do something about it other than express their support. And then they are just limited to those medical rides. And what we know is people need to get their haircut, they want to get their groceries, get their prescriptions. They might want to go to the beach or go to an event, a concert or something, who knows what. So we want to have all those options available.
So are you
Allison?
looking for town
Allison?
sponsorship?
Allison, do you have anything to say?
Gonna be great. I think we have a lot of people here in town that would benefit from being able to use a ride somewhere. And I have a lot of clients that do use the fish program. But like Karen was saying, it's just for medical appointments only. So I think for our seniors in town that could use a ride to go like to the movies or to lunch or something would be really great.
Pat, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Did you?
Well, I didn't know if it was going to be something that would be sponsored by the town and say under the purview of Allison and all the other programs that are run that way. I mean, where does this fit strategically in a business model,
Absolutely. And we would love for Allison to be involved in the planning of that. And what's important to us is if you're going to be a partner, that you come in on the ground floor and that we don't come to you with a program that's already pre-planned and pre-packaged and say, do you want in? What we want is you to say what your community needs. Is it best living in a municipality and sharing those services and that ride coordination? Is it best living with a nonprofit who serves all 3 towns and they have that ride coordination? Perhaps we support them in other ways. We really want you in on the ground floor if there's that support so that it's all of our program. It's not Kennebunk's program coming and saying, all right, get in the car and sit in the back seat. No, we want you up front with us, and we'd like to know if we have that support because that's the planning that needs to start happening.
Well, I think that we all kind of feel the same way, that we are a community who needs this sort of activity. What's the pleasure of the board?
I think it's great.
Do we vote on this, Laurie, or just say
I think
we're
it would be
in?
good to take an action to say that we're supportive of investing our time at this point in continuing with the development of the program. There's no financial commitment at this point.
Okay.
Well, then I will make that motion that Lori just said.
Second it.
Yep. Is that enough, Laurie?
Well, you're gonna vote on it, but then it'll be enough.
I wanted to make sure. And the vote is Pat Briggs,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and Sheila says aye. It sounds like a wonderful plan.
Does.
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you all
Allison?
very much. And we look
Good.
forward to bringing you updates and even continued feedback from you about the program when we do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Alan,
Thank you.
you'll just have a lot more work to do.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. All right, item 9, annual appointment of town officers. And shall I read it?
Yes.
Of course. The following list of officers to be appointed for the upcoming year. Please, okay, blah, blah, blah. Thank you. Animal Control Officer, Deborah Higgins. Assessor, Rebecca Nolet. Code Enforcement Officer, Werner Gilliam. Assistant Code Enforcement Officer, Greg Reed. Assistant Code Enforcement Officer, Andrew Welch. Plumbing Inspector, Werner Gilliam. Assistant Plumbing Inspector, Greg Reed. Assistant Plumbing Inspector, Andrew Welch. Emergency Management Director, Craig Sanford.
Ms. Constable.
Oh, I missed Constable. Constable, Rebecca Nolet. Emergency Management Director, Craig Sanford. Fire Chief, John Everett. Fire Inspector, John Everett. Harbor Master, Cape Porpoise, Chris Mayo. Harbor Master Kennebunk River, Jamie Houts. Health Officer, Allison Kenaway. Public Access Officer, Tracy O'Rourke. Registrar of Voters, Tracy O'Rourke. Road Commissioner, Chris Simeone. Shellfish Warden, Everett Leach. Street Naming and Numbering Delegate, John Everett. Tax Collector, Lori Smith. Town Clerk, Tracy O'Rourke. Town Forester, Patrick Briggs. Treasurer, Denise Brown. And Tree Warden, John Ripton.
I move we appoint said officers to said positions for the next year.
Second.
And seconded. All right, and the roll, Pat Briggs,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
All right,
Ed,
Aye.
and Sheila says aye. Motion passes. Item 10, consider establishing zoning determination fees. So that would be Laurie and Werner.
In your packet is a memorandum from Werner Gilliam about zoning determination fees. I'll let Werner explain it.
Yep.
Sure. So on occasion, we get requests, whether it be from banks, lenders, property owners, for zoning determinations. And what this involves is this usually involves, the generation of a memo where we as staff research the property. Really, what we're looking for there is, folks are looking for written determination on uses, conformity, whether or not there's any pending or past violations. And so with that being said, depending on the property, it can take a fair amount of staff time to do these zoning determinations. And so what we'd like to do is we'd like to, have an established fee schedule for when these types of requests come in. Because this does at times involve a fair amount of work for staff, as opposed to just pulling a file and providing information that is readily available. It does involve at times a fair bit of work, and so to that end, we'd like to add those items to our fee schedule of services that we provide.
A question for you. If is $150, is $150 an average? Because I'm looking, if you spend 10 hours on something, you're getting $15 an hour, and that just doesn't cover it with overhead and everything else that we do. Salaries, number one, and then overhead. Are you getting enough at the 150 and the 200? Does it average out, is what I'm asking.
Yes. I'm, the price, that we have, or the cost that we have proposed here, I'm comfortable with those numbers based on what the typical request is whenever it comes in and what it's asking for. These aren't looking for, multi-page reports on a property. These are typically, predetermined questions that we're researching and making a determination on. And it's not a full-blown report that's being generated.
But if you're spending 10 hours,
that's not the typical.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
the typical may just, be a few, you may be spending, 2 to 3 hours, on a property.
Gotcha.
Are there who's next?
go ahead, Sheila.
All right, are there any requests that are easy, say, that take you 5 minutes or 10 minutes? I mean,
Sure.
I don't want to put these kind of fees on people if it's something that can be handled in 5 or 10 minutes.
I would say there is rarely, if ever, a 5 or 10 minute item. And this, what we're looking for specifically here are the ones where lending institutions are looking for a memorandum that's on letterhead and that's put in, and something that's put in writing. So I would say the simplest one is, for example, would be a residential property where a bank is looking for a determination on buildability. That type of, looking through the file, looking to see what we have publicly available and generating the memo, staff time for that is, probably less than an hour. It would be the simplest one if we have all the information for just maybe a standard residential lot. The ones that, that take more time are the commercial properties, where there might be multiple planning board files to go through, zoning board files, likely some research in the vault. Those are the ones that are going to take, multiple hours at that point.
Okay.
So
To
how
make a
many-
motion that we approve these fees.
I have a question. How many do we normally get in a year?
So so this past year, and this was an anomaly, but we had, I'm going to say we had close to 20 of these that came through. And I say it's an anomaly because the situation was when the Kennebunkport Resort Collection went through a refinance. It was the example. And so
Okay.
for each one of those properties, we had a zoning determination request. And that request also came in from, say, there were multiple requests for each property. So they had a number of different services that each asked similar questions, but slightly different. And so we needed to respond to those. Now, that's not typical, for us to get, all of those all at once. But I would say, it's not uncommon for us to get, 10 to 12 of these a year. And the residential ones are becoming more common as banks are tightening up their lending practices and they're looking for assurances that a lot is buildable before they lend monies for those. So I do expect us to start seeing more of these.
I have a question. If somebody comes in or somebody calls and asks for a zoning determination, and it's a real easy one, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, is that something that you can say, well, that's okay. It didn't take us long. You don't have to pay the 150. Just asking.
Well, sure. No, that's a great question. So I would ask you all how you would like me to handle situations like that. We can certainly do something, of a lesser time frame or a lesser cost based on amount of time, that we anticipate that we may spend with the simple one. The biggest issue is generating a memorandum that is an official record in writing. Obviously, we're not charging people whenever they walk in the door and say, hey, I have a question about this property. That's just what we do. We do that all the time.
Yeah.
It's when it gets to the point where you're generating an opinion in writing that is a potentially appealable decision and that carries a significant amount of weight whenever you put that in writing and you put that forward to a property owner and a lending institution. It's
Okay,
those situations there.
I like what you said. Okay, any more questions?
I'll second
No, but
Mike's motion.
Okay, go ahead, Alan.
Okay, Mike made the motion, Alan seconded it. And so let's take a vote. Pat,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and Sheila agrees, motion passes. Thank you, Werner.
Great, thank you.
Very good
And-
information.
Item 11, update on landfill monitor. Chris,
Hi, how's everybody doing tonight?
Good, Chris, you?
Good, Chris.
so far
Good.
so good.
Great. So back in November, Maine Department of Environmental Protection reached out to us to perform some PFAS testing at our landfill in response to the ongoing concern over the PFAS chemicals that we're seeing popping up nationwide. So the results of those tests came back in our monitoring wells, as well as the drinking water well at the highway garage. And it came back and showed that there were exceedances in the state's interim drinking limits for PFAS. The current interim limit for PFAS is 20 nanograms per liter or 20 parts per trillion. So after those results came back, they required us to test other houses that were within 1,000 feet of the landfill in that watershed area. That ended up being a total of 14 residences. At the time I had written this memo last week, 9 of the 14 had been sampled and tested. However, I just got confirmation earlier this week that the remaining 5 have also been sampled. We have not gotten the test results back on those 5. But the 9 that we did get back, one of those residences did have exceedances over the interim drinking limit. We are setting that resident up with water treatment equipment to install a water filtration system in their house to resolve that issue. At this time, Maine DEP is going to fund 100% of the costs that are related to the investigation of the PFAS. And they're also going to pay 90% of the remediation costs if the house was built before 1999. If the house was constructed after 1999, they're going to pay for 50% of that. So I didn't know if anybody had any questions. We kind of wanted to bring you up to speed on it. And
No, that was good news.
Yeah, very good news.
Very good.
Except for the
news.
people who had the high level, but
There's only the one, you know, so far, which is very
so
good.
far.
So when they install the new equipment into this gentleman's house, is that going to take care of all the PFAS problems?
So it's supposed to, Alan. There will be quarterly testing for that house, just to make sure that the system is functioning the way it's supposed to be.
Now, will you continue to test some of those other homes?
So as of right now, the information after we get the test results back from the 5 remaining residents, that is going to go to the state geologist, and the geologist is going to digest those results and kind of look at the characteristics of the watershed and make a determination as to whether or not there should be continued testing for the residents.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks.
And item 12, review recommendations of the Beach Advisory Committee, continuation of the discussion from the last meeting. We shall take it from, I think what we're going to do is we're going to take each of the items on an individual basis. And I, for some reason, don't have my form with me. Lori, if you have your form, can you read off what's written and then we'll take a vote or we'll discuss?
I can. One other thing I wanted to let you know, Kate Bauer-Burke is in the audience. And I know that she was hoping that she could be brought up so she could answer any questions that the board might have had. Yes, yes, sorry, I didn't hear you the first time.
Okay, back again. So the first one?
So the first recommendation was that landscaping, construction, and maintenance vehicles must not park on the street. And so asking the town to enforce no parking But the chief had recommended we do this throughout all of town if we're going to do it. And then we do a week of warnings.
Do we have any comments here?
I have a comment. I think the cure is going to be much worse than the situation that already presents itself. I just think that, you know, you have so many, I was watching, going through the town this week, seeing all the construction workers, seeing all the landscapers that's starting up. And there are places, there are no parking on the guy's property or the lady's property to be able to put a truck off the street. So what are they going to do? Are they just going to, the landscapers aren't going to mow the grass if they can't get to their property. They're not going to take their equipment 300 or 400 feet or yards or whatever. I think it's just going to cause more trouble than it's creating. That's my opinion.
And then I had a question about the oil trucks. If we're gonna prevent the landscapers, what are we gonna do about the oil trucks and the gas trucks in the winter? I agree with you, Al. I agree with you, you know, that it's gonna open up a can of worms. But anybody else?
I got a question. The only place that they are not allowed to park are wherever there are no parking signs or areas. What about the areas where there are no parking signs that anybody can park and they park there? I mean, we can't say, okay, you can park your car there, but you can't park your truck or whatever. So even up and down Pier Road, just use Pier Road as an example, there's areas where you can't park, but there's areas where you can park. So how do we tell landscapers they can't park where there's parking allowed? I don't understand that. So I don't know how that would work. As far as the gas and the oil trucks, they don't take much time, and those are essential services. And I wouldn't have any problem with them whatsoever. But I do think we need to, if we're going to do something, I said it same thing I said last meeting. If we're going to implement a change, I'm with Alan and Sheila that we just can't go slam the door shut without some kind of a warning that we're going to be changing how we look at things. And then if we need to, then we change. Somebody talked about, well, we got to restrict the size of the trailers. I don't have any problem with that, but we need to change the ordinance if that's what we're going to do. We need to have something in the ordinances. So my suggestion is the same as I said last time, is that why don't we take a look at it and have a cut-in period, whatever that is, we determine it is, and go from there. You just can't, I'm with Sheila and Alan, you just can't tell these guys and ladies who are doing landscaping that they can't do it anymore. We can request that people park in their clients' yards. I know we can do that. No, I don't know how many would be able to, but we can do that. And the clients would have to make arrangements to get their own cars out. I mean, that's one way we can approach it. But I'm with Alan, but there's got to be some kind, and Sheila, there's got to be some kind of a reasonable approach here, rather than just saying Monday, you can't do this anymore, or Tuesday, whatever. And I don't think a warning thing of a week or two is gonna do it. I mean,
It's not gonna cut it.
So anyway,
I think we're also putting a lot of pressure on our police department.
well, I think we are too. But Ed's got a good point. We have an ordinance. And
Well,
if we're not going to follow the ordinance, then we need to let people know we're not going to follow the ordinance, and, you know, just shut it off on the next day or whatever. It's difficult to do because, and then I would like to have somebody look at the main statutes and the main laws, because I want to know, it's like, is custom over years, does it become law? I don't know. Or does it become accepted law is what I would say. Not that it's,
Right, right.
I just want to know if that is, from a legal standpoint, are we okay saying no landscapers can park, or whatever, however we say it?
Right.
Does custom, because I know that, if you've got a right of way on a piece of property, and the main law used to be, I don't know if it still is, that if you wanted to maintain that, your own easement or whatever, you had to walk it every year or do something with it every year.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there must be some kind of law by, I don't know. But we need to find out before we go and just say it's ending, and oh, by the way, we get sued, and we find out that, yeah, hey, there is a law.
For all these reasons, why don't we just table this?
Well, that's why I said, why don't we have some kind of a cut-in period and a review period, get these questions answered, and then do something, instead of just say, okay, Monday you can't do this.
Yeah.
And
Or turn the whole thing down.
yeah, and bring the whole thing down. And because I think that there's some logic, into it is a safety hazard, a lot of these. When you get trucks parked on both sides of the road, and it happens, that it's a safety issue on all of our streets and roads. But let's make sure that we're within the law, and let's make sure that we've thought everything out before we do it. That's all.
Yeah.
That's my point of view. So.
I agree with you, Pat. I think we table it. We go through a little more discussion, maybe contact some landscapers and that type of people who utilize the roads like that. So shall we pass on number one?
Yeah,
Can I speak first?
Sure, you can.
Absolutely.
And I won't be an obstructionist tonight, I promise. I think there's just a lot of confusion in this, and I'm with Mike. I think this needs a bigger look. But remember, this came from the Goose Rocks Beach committee, so we're all maybe in our heads we're thinking about Goose Rocks Beach. And in Goose Rocks Beach, it is a little different because of the way the parking system is set down there. Any place that isn't a designated parking area is basically no parking. But when we take it out to the 10,000 foot level and we look at our town, we do have parking and no parking on certain streets. So yes, I would definitely support and be willing to work with the chief and whomever, landscapers, to come up with an appropriate solution. Because at the end of the day, this is simply a public safety issue. It's not. It's not we're punishing landscapers or anything. And I feel as though we need to enforce our ordinance. Maybe we need to change our ordinance a little bit to make some accommodations. But because, as I said the last time, if you have a landscaping vehicle we have some sort of a work vehicle parked on the side of the road. I don't want to. We picked on poor landscapers enough. And then you have another car, just a regular sedan parked right next to it, both in no parking. Does that mean that we would go and ticket the sedan and leave the landscaping vehicle alone? I don't think anybody here thinks that that's how we should operate. So yes, I'm fine with tabling this and having a real discussion, having a sit down with some people, not at a public meeting. The meeting could be open to the public, of course, but not at a regular Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Okay, so we'll table number one.
Yeah, we brought Kate up here. Let's at least ask her to speak before we shut this off.
All right, Kate.
Let me unmute myself. Thank you. I understand the concerns, and I'm grateful to hear that people also understand. We're speaking for the Goose Rocks Beach area, even though I realize that this has broader implications for the whole town. We have to deal with the situations we see happening at Goose Rocks Beach, where we have a vastly increased population in the summertime and relatively narrow roads, et cetera. And as Ed pointed out, pretty much a no parking zone everywhere other than the obvious designated parking spaces. So, while I understand that, you know, that it is up to the town to determine how to enforce it, and I fully understand, as Mike said, you know, the last time, neither my husband nor I in our mid-70s are getting out there and mowing our own lawn. We are happily using these lawn services and happily patronizing local business people who have been doing this for years. The man we use has been doing our house for 20 some odd years now. But there are some safety concerns. Support the idea that we move forward, the town moves forward, the police chief, whoever, in discussing this further with the people who will be affected. But I appreciate the fact of moving forward and saying the principle of this is still good. We just need to figure out, you need to figure out how to implement it, being fair to all. So,
Okay, thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Kate.
So we'll table number 1, look at it another time, go to number 2.
So number
go ahead.
2 was that the town deploy the occasional use of the speed monitor on the west end of Kings Highway and continue with sporadic speed monitor use on Dyke Road and New Biddeford Road, and that the speed bumps be used again on New Biddeford Road. So police and public works are in agreement that they would do both of those things. This year, the issue we have is we do have one traffic sign, and it is in high demand in the summer months, as there are other streets as well that want its use, but we would use it as we could.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Oh, I got a question.
Do you have a, I'm sorry, question?
You know, I understand the concern and the need for this item 2. What I'm wondering is if it would be helpful if the Goose Rocks Beach people were to purchase another traffic sign.
Who are the Goose Rocks Beach people?
Well,
You mean
Goose
the
Rocks
town?
Beach, no, the Goose Rocks Beach.
Who?
Well, that's town money, Pat.
Oh, I know it's town money, but
Yeah.
it's given to them for their disposal.
No.
No, that
No?
wouldn't be it.
It's not?
If we need another one, we should look at that next budget cycle. But I agree with you, Pat. We did discuss that and decided that probably wasn't the best use of Goose Rocks Beach money, because then it would quote unquote belong to Goose Rocks Beach.
I mean, we would probably think it's a good idea.
So I just want to remind people that every time that we do this, we have to charge up the machine. The data has to be, not the data, but the power has to be programmed. It has to be set. Somebody has to bring it out on site. We have to have a place for it. I mean, so there is staff, energy, and time besides putting these signs up in different locations. But right now we have one sign.
We spent most of its time on Pier Road last year. We don't need it down there again this year.
You don't?
We don't.
I don't agree with that.
I see it every morning when I
I'd
pull
like
in
to see one
go
on
to my
Langsford
boat.
Road too. Okay, anything else on that one? Can we have a
No.
motion? Can we have a
I
motion
move that
then?
we accept item number 2.
Second,
Second. Yep, second.
Okay,
All right.
and let me take the roll. Pat,
Aye.
Mike,
All right.
Alan,
aye,
Ed,
Aye.
and Sheila says aye. So number 2 passes. Lori, number 3?
Number 3 is that the town stripe both edges of the road on the west end of Kings Highway and on Community House Road. And they said if this doesn't work in 2022, we could look at a pedestrian bike path in 2023. So staff's concern is that these striped lines be fog lines rather than considered a pedestrian or bike path, because they would not meet the width requirements. And we don't want to put people in danger. But if it is a traffic line to simply point out where the edge of the road is, then, you know, staff doesn't have an issue with it. I think one issue was where the streets are no parking zones, the town practices to paint a yellow line instead of a white line. And so we would use whatever judgment makes sense.
Okay. Can I speak to that a bit, Lori?
Sure.
All right, again, I don't know if Barry Engel is out there in the audience, and he's much more knowledgeable about this than I, but because he's worked directly with Art LeMay and Tom, I think his last name is Landry. Either that or I'm confusing him with the old Dallas coach. The two experienced traffic engineers who have really helped us put together, look at the, Barry, is that, can Barry be? Yeah, that'd be good if it's okay with everybody else.
Ask Sheila, she's the
Sure.
she's
Yes.
the chair.
Yes, yes. So where is he?
I don't know.
Barry? Barry needs to unmute himself.
I
think we're there.
Oh,
There
good.
he is.
There he is.
There-
Great.
Thank-
Barry, if you,
Thank you very,
listening, if you can give a little bit, you're much more expert on the detail as to why we're suggesting the striping, at least as a first cut, as opposed to any, and not intending it to be necessarily anything resembling a pedestrian walkway or whatever, but that it has benefits that may be seen.
absolutely. And first, thank you all for your attention to this. It's really important to those of us living at the beach. I'll just say that one of the gentlemen on the subcommittee, Tom Adler, he's worked for 30 years in traffic safety. And his contention, and it certainly makes sense to many of the people that have worked on this, is that by having the striping, it gives to those driving, to those on bicycle, it gives the perception of a narrower roadway and people slow down. That has been proven by many studies that they've done. So this is not the essence of this is not to create a pedestrian or bike lane or anything like that. It's purely to slow down the traffic. And as you know, on the West End, and it's the same thing on Community Road, those are narrow to begin with. And the traffic there can sometimes, people, at least at the West End, they rush down to the end to try to get one of those open spots. They get there, they're all taken, and then inevitably they turn around and now rushing back to the general beach. And whatever we can do to slow down that traffic, to make it safer for the pedestrians, for the strollers, for the cyclists, for the kids that are out there during the summer, that's what we're trying to do. So it's purely a safety matter, nothing more than that.
I think we're all in agreement. I don't think any of us have a problem with it.
Good.
Do we have questions from the board?
No, I'm okay.
Can we take a motion?
I move, what's that, number 2 or
Number
no, number
three.
3. Number 3, that we paint a what did you call that, Lori?
Fog line.
A fog line, yeah. A color determined by highway, the West End and Community House Road.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, taking the roll. Pat,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and Sheila says aye. That is fine. And now we have number 4. Lori?
So number 4 was a request to provide signage at the intersection of Dyke Road and Kings Highway, indicating that parking is to the left and that a pictogram for towing be added to the signage. Staff said that we can order and erect a sign stating parking to the left, but that we would not recommend putting a pictograph as towing, as we don't tow for simple parking violations.
I think we have enough signs. That's my
Yeah,
opinion.
me too.
I don't think we need it.
I agree.
I agree.
All right.
I think it would work here. I do.
Okay.
Can I?
So I make the motion without the pictogram for towing, that we erect the parking arrow at the intersection of Dyke Road and Kings Highway.
And can I just put a few words in there?
Go ahead, Kate.
And believe me, we're certainly in general against adding more signs. And one of the projects, as you probably know, is for the Beach Advisory Committee this year, and particularly our communications subcommittee, is to look at, can we reduce the sign pollution, make it more effective, and find other ways electronically, digitally, of communicating information that people coming to the beach need or want to know. This one instance, we're asking for just the one sign. And Barry may be able to speak to this, but apparently it is, if you come to a T intersection like that and you don't necessarily know, where am I going to find parking? As we know, apparently the general inclination of almost everybody is to make a right turn. And I can understand that. I would much rather make a right turn than a left turn most times. In this instance, we only have 4 parking spaces on the west end, and it's a good mile farther down the west end. So people have to drive a long ways generally to find out that there is no parking available there. So it makes a lot more sense, we think, both from a safety standpoint, to encourage people not to be making this drive, as Barry pointed out, oftentimes hurrying down that way, and then when they find there is no parking, hurrying the way back. When out of the 173 parking spaces, 169 of them are to the left. So this is why we would advise putting a sign at that, right as you come to that T intersection at the general store, saying park, however it's worded, public parking to the left or beach parking to the left. So it's not a matter of we really want to add to the sign pollution. We just want to make it simpler for people to find the parking, if it's available, that they're looking for.
Questions from the board?
I think it's going to indicate that there's a parking lot down there, and there isn't.
Right.
Thank you, Mike.
I think it's going to be very, very confusing for people, and they're going to be down driving up the side streets looking for a parking lot.
I agree.
That's my personal feeling, anyway.
You think that?
You already know mine.
Pat, any comment?
Mike's got a good point there. I just don't think you need to put more signs up.
Okay.
Well, I
So,
made a motion, but I guess I don't get a second tonight.
do we make a motion and then vote on it? Do we want to have them?
You didn't get a second, so there's no vote.
There is no
Okay.
motion.
All right.
Under Robert's rules, there is no motion.
There is no motion, so we
So it's
will.
dead.
It's dead. Thank you. And number 5, there was a 5.
Yeah, paint the crosswalks.
5 is that existing crosswalks be repainted in bright white, and that is our practice every spring, so staff has
Right.
no issue with that.
To me, this is a moot point because it gets done anyway.
Yeah, but they've got a good point, because doing it at the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
it's gone. So I would like to see it maintained on a, I know you can't do it every week, and that's not what I'm looking for, but somebody needs to look at this later in the season. It's the same downtown, it's the same everywhere, the crosswalks and so forth. They tend to really, if you look at them right now, they're pretty much in a lot of places faded out. So I would just say it's a good point, that they need to be painted. So, and maybe they need to be repainted in some cases. I don't know what the criteria is, but somebody's going to get hurt somewhere. It's all over town, though. It's all over town.
All
And
right.
it's in every town. It's not just our town.
Yeah. I don't think anyone disagrees with the
No,
repainting of the crosswalks.
no.
So
I
wanna
make a
make-
motion, we approve it.
thank you.
Second,
All right, now I'm going to make the call, the roll. Pat,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
aye,
Ed,
Aye.
and Sheila says aye.
Okay.
So that Item 12, excuse me, item 13. Accept $400 donation from the Church on the Cape for the emergency fuel fund.
So moved with much appreciation.
Second,
All right, and the roll call, Pat,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Jill says aye. And we're on to other business. Pat, do you have anything?
No, nothing. Thank you.
Mike,
No, nothing.
thank you. Alan,
Well, yeah, I have just one little thing. Softball's coming up springtime, probably in another month or 6 weeks, we'll be playing again. So we're looking for players. Anytime they want to come out, they're more than welcome to.
A lot of
Usually
fun. We had
It
people
is.
there from 8 years old to literally 80. How old's
That's-
Dan? 84?
Yeah,
Wow.
8 to 80.
wow.
And if you have a hard time running, we will definitely find somebody to run for you.
Schoolyard rules. We just pick a team, different teams every week and just play for fun.
Do they have to sign up at the rec department or anything, or just show up?
Well, they can show up, but they'll have to fill out who they are and whatever, yeah? And we'll give them a t-shirt and a hat.
Yeah.
All righty.
Thank you.
And Ed, do you have anything?
No, I just piggybacked on Alan. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, and I have nothing tonight. So it's up to you, Lori.
So I wanted to talk about meeting in person. So we last talked about this at the end of February. The board agreed that they wanted to wait through the budget process. Although we're not completely done with the budget process, your next regular meeting will be April 14th. And so I know that in the past, there's been some discussion about whether the board could have a hybrid meeting. And I know we've heard from the public who wants to be able to still participate virtually, especially those that don't live here year round. So our Crackerjack crew, Dave and Mike, have been working on a hybrid model. So tonight, before our regular meeting, the department directors assisted us in testing a hybrid model at the fire station meeting room. I would tell you that, remember when we went to virtual, all the work involved doing that. Well, take that and double it for hybrid meetings. So it is doable, and I think that we were successful. Some of the challenges include for the chair of our boards, regulating an in-person who want to talk and virtual people who want to talk, making sure that people who are watching on Zoom format can hear the people in the room. It is 150% important that you are speaking right into the microphone like this for those Zoom people to hear you. If there is a presentation of material like before the planning board, it is going to take some maneuvering for an in-person presentation so that the presenter at the computer who is hosting, like Dave hosts our Zoom meeting, would have to do the presentation so that the people virtually and the people in person can. We definitely need 2 people. A lot of times we have 2 people running the meeting. Mike and Dave work together as a team for the cable TV as well as for the Zoom format. There is no question you need 2 people for the hybrid model, because one is manipulating the Zoom meeting and the other is managing the cameras in the meeting room and checking the audio, etc. So there is work, and I am a little concerned with if this was only for selectmen and planning board, but we also have the growth planning committee having regular meetings, planning board, selectmen, zoning board of appeals. The Conservation Commission, I'm sure will want this. The Goose Rock Speech Committee, I'm sure will want this model. And so that gets into whether we have the staff available for all of these meetings to do hybrid. So I'm just giving you the realities of the situation. You know, Dave and Mike and I are more than willing to move forward with that model, but you know, it should be a policy from the board that we can bring back to you about how we're going to operate and who's going to meet when. It will make it near impossible to have impromptu meetings in this model. So I don't know if Dave and Mike have anything to add, but I wanted to tell you, you know, where we are with that, and that, you know, you would need to be patient with us through the first one, but we are ready when you are. And if you want to do hybrid model, there is not a requirement that you do a hybrid model. The requirement is if you're meeting in person, we can just have in-person meetings like we used to. But I have heard from the community that there is a desire to remain virtual for some portion of that.
Okay. I guess we'll see how it goes.
So are you guys interested in going back to in-person in April? What should we plan for your next meeting?
I'm happy with virtual. I like being able to stay home. However, I think that is going to be up to the state, right?
Well, I think the state's intent is that we would be in person when you can be, unless there were circumstances. And in the past, the board set a policy because of the rise of COVID that they would go virtual. You know, and I could talk to the town attorney about, you know, going forward and where the statutes are at this point in time. But I'm really looking for direction from the board.
I have a question. So on the hybrid model, would that let, say if the selectman was out of town for that particular night, but would he or she be able to participate?
Yes.
Okay.
And vote?
So it's been a while since I looked at the statute language, but I believe the recent changes that they have adopted would allow the selectmen to vote.
Okay.
I think that's, I would like to see the hybrid model.
And just so you know, David James in the audience has his hand up.
Well, let's hear from David.
Unmute. Now can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Dave.
Okay, I strongly support the hybrid model. I think you get far more participation of the residents of the town watching what's going on in the meeting rather than coming to the meetings. So I strongly support the hybrid model.
I'm fine with as long as it works. And I guess we're not going to really know until we put it through the test.
Sure,
Right.
agree.
So if Dave and Mike are ready for us, then I guess we can do the face-to-face, but if they would like more time, you know, like you said, it's not essential.
Dave and
Okay, so let's start in April then.
Give it a try, yeah?
We'll give it
Yeah.
a try in April.
okay, great.
All right, April 14th it is. Isn't it the 14th?
It is.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, we're going to go a week without having a meeting.
Well, next week, the
two.
budget board meets from their recommendations, and then you could meet the first week in April if you and the budget board are not in agreement.
Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yep.
You did such a good job, you and your staff, Lori. I don't think there'll be any issues.
I don't either.
You know,
And I
we're
mean
just,
that. I'm
we're
not
here.
just saying that. I think I predict good things.
Well, we have a great team we work for, so.
It's all good.
All right, enough of the Mutual Admiration Society. I move the warrants.
Second.
And Pat,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and Sheila says aye.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor.
Hey.
Yay.
Aye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good job.
Good
Night.
night. Good night.